I was also not. The background is okay.
The background is okay.
Right?
It's a little bright, but it's okay. At first, I would like to say thank you, Professor, very much to allow me, as a young generation, have a chance to meet Professor, and Professor can give us some sharing the knowledge and the insight about the decline of in Buddhism in India. This is very significant, and Professor also know we are very young and we don't know exactly what happened. Professor have also the knowledge and theory aspect, and also the experience about exactly what happened. That is what we really want to know. So thank you, Professor.
So it has been already started, no? For how minutes do you need?
Professor have any idea about the decline of Buddhism in India? So Professor can share with us.
Okay.
We did not like Q&A, just like sharing the knowledge.
Okay.
Like in the class where Professor gives some lecture to the student, and we are the student to listen to the Professor.
So, okay, Venerable, thank you very much. So, this decline of Buddhism in India had been a very debatable topic in Indian researchers or among the Indian scholars also. There are so many theories and hypotheses related with the decline of Buddhism in India. There are some theories that there will decline in the royal patronage by the royal kings to the monasteries, to the sanghas also. There is another theory that there is a Turks inventions, that is the Muslim inventions. There is another theory that there were Brahminical attacks to the sanghas or to the members of the Buddhist society. So there are so many theories, but let us discuss that what are the main aspects which are discussed by our Indian scholars. I will discuss, and some of the points I will discuss related with that what are the points which have been not discussed by our Indian scholars that are very, and R.C. Mitra, he had also written Decline of Buddhism in India, and it was published by our Viswabharati University Shanti Niketan long back, I think 30-40 years back. And he had also written that there were decline in the ethical and moral aspects of the bhikkhus at that time also. Not only the Brahminical or tertiary basis, but it was due to the Buddhist. They themselves declined in India. There are so many recently Professor K.T.S. Rao, he had also written Decline of Buddhism in India. But he had also discussed about some of the aspects which were not taken by other scholars like the R.C. Mitra and others. I will discuss some of the points of our K.T.S. Rao also. But before coming to this main points, there are some of the causes. There are some of the points which are understood as a decline of Buddhism in India. First of all, there is a point that there were persecutions of the Buddhist kings also. And we know that Pushyamitra king, he had attacked Buddhist also. And if you go through the history of ancient India, you will find that how Buddhists were persecuted by our Pushyamitra king also. And this is one of the aspects. And surprisingly, it is seen that India was not having any state religion. Like at present we are having in Thailand or in Sri Lanka or in Myanmar, that Buddhist is the state religion. But in India also, even at the time of King Ashoka also, the state religion Buddhism was not declared. And during the time of Harshvardhan, 5th century AD, after the Gupta period, we also find that there was no state religion. All religions were having equal status at that time also. At the time of King Ashoka also, we are also find. It is also said that King Ashoka became Buddhist also at in the end also, but we do not have such type of informations, archaeological evidence or something like that. But they were even the persecutions of the Buddhist by the Pushyamitra king. It is also not one of the factors for decline of the Buddhism, because there were other kings also in southern India, and also when the Buddhists were persecuted by the Pushyamitra king, in other parts of India, the Buddhists were also rising. So it is seen historically in South India, there were so many stupas and the temples which were constructed after the Pushyamitra king also. So it is not one of the factors that Buddhism declined because of the persecution of the Pushyamitra king also. Then there was another king who came, Sasank, King Sasank of the Bengal. And it is also said that he also persecuted Buddhists and he was in favor of Brahmanism and others, Tantras and Mantras also. And the area of Sasank from the Magadha, that is from Patliputra to Bengal area also. And that was very, you can say, dominant area. And Sasank had also dominated also Brahmanism or Hinduism. So that is not a part of one of the factor of decline of Buddhism in India. So the third theory, which is considered by attacks of Brahmanism. Brahmins, if you go through the 8th century AD, Sankaracharya became dominant, and he was king. Sorry, I was telling about the Brahmanism. So Sankaracharya, I was talking about the Sankaracharya. Sankaracharya, he was even it is charged that Sankaracharya was one of the Prachanna Bauddha also. He took some of the basic ideas from the Buddhism and he interpreted in different manner also. And that is why he is called as a Prachanna Bauddha. And Sankaracharya is also considered as a Prachanna Bauddha. So the historians of ancient India, they are saying that Buddhism did not decline in India, but it was assimilated into Hinduism. Buddhism became a part and parcel of our Hinduism. And even the Buddha, he became one of the 10 incarnations of the Lord Vishnu also. During this time we are having the references that he became one of the incarnations of the Lord Vishnu. So it was also not one of the factors for the decline of the Buddhism, because the elements of the Buddhism became the part and parcel of the Hinduism also. All the philosophical ideas and the thoughts which were available in Buddhism, they were taken together in our Hinduism also. They became and they interpreted in different manner also. So there was another thing which we see after the 8th century AD. There was a rise of the Bhakti movement also. During the Bhakti movement, we see that how before the beginning of our Mughal invention or Turks inventions, there is a Bhakti movement also, and during the Bhakti movement, our Buddhist god, Buddhist deities were also, they were worshipped, and they were as respected by the Hindu gods also. So this is one of the factor for decline of the Buddhism. But it is not one of the factor for the decline of the Buddhism, because there were also in other parts of India there were Bhakti movements also. But Buddhism was prospering in South India also, and we are having the temples and references also. Then there was another factor which became one of the most vital factor for the decline of Buddhism. That was the language. Language, if you go through at the time of the Buddha, even in the Vinaya Pitaka, we find in the Chulvagga, Buddha says that the teachings of the Buddha can be translated into its own language. Sakai Nirutya Buddhavachanam Padya Punitam. Even if you go through that, there were two Brahman converts, bhikkhus. They approached to the Buddha and they asked that why not the teachings of the Buddha be translated into Chandas language. Then Buddha became very much angry, and he said that whosoever translates the teachings of the Buddha into Chandas, that will be committing an offense also. So, yo Chandaso aropaya apati dukkadassa, and Sakai Durutya Buddhavachanam Padyapunitam. So Buddha was in favor of that the teachings may be translated into its own languages where it is being preached. But later on, after the 1st century AD, we see that how Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit became more popular, and the teachings of the Buddha were translated into the Sanskrit text also. And even in the Gupta period also, and after the Gupta period, all the Buddhist thoughts were written down in Sanskrit language. So it became, we are also aware that Sanskrit became the language of the intellectuals and the Brahmanas also, because all the Hindus, Vedas, Upanishad and Brahmana Puranas were written down in Sanskrit. So it became the part of the Brahmanas. Since it was all the teachings, Buddhist thoughts were written down in our, we are having the 9 Bapul Sutras, which are available in Sanskrit also. And later on also, all that teachings of the Buddha were written down in our Sanskrit. That was one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism. Because the text which were not common to the local people or laities, those who were believers in the Sangha. So that was one of the factors for decline of the Buddhism. And if you go through the relations between the laity and the bhikkhus, so there were some barriers between the bhikkhus and the laities also, upasak and upasikas. If you go through the relations between the upasak and bhikkhu, upasikas are only as a servants. They were approaching to the temples, they were approaching to the bhikkhus, and they were serving. They were just like a serving, you can say. And there were two trends in our goal of the achieving a state of eternal bliss. It was said that bhikkhus can get a state of eternal bliss by purifying his consciousness, chitta visuddhi. And it was also said that the leti, Upasaka, they, their duties are only to serve the temples as well as bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis. So that was the one of the main causes of not developing our community as a sangha or Buddhist sangha. In relation with Jainism, Jainism was establishing close relations between the latics as well as the Jain Munis also. But the same trend was not available in our Indian Buddhism also. So that was one of the factors for the decline of the Buddhism, because Buddhism did not get the support of the our common people, that is the Upasak and Upasikas, in later due course. So we are having some of the references that how it declined here. Then we are also at the time of the Asoka, King Asoka. We know that there were 18 schools of the Buddhist thoughts also. 11 belonging to the Theravadins, Theravadins, and 7 Mahasanghikas. So altogether 18 sects. Even after the 1st century AD, we also see there are so many small groups of the sanghas they developed. And later on we are also having Mahayana, Vaibhasik, Sautantrik, Yogachar and Vigyanavadins. So they were 4 main, you can say, schools of Buddhist thought, and their thoughts were also differing with each other also. And in due course, in Nepal and other countries, we are also having development of Vajrayan, that believing in the mysticism and other things, rituals and the ceremonies. So there were so many small groups they developed, and there was no any control on any sects also. So that may be one of the factor for the decline of Buddhism in India. So that was the main, you can say. So the division of the sanghas into different sects and the schools, that was one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism. There were no any unity among the Buddhist sanghas. There was no any control. There was no any king who can control over it. We see that in case of Sri Lanka and Cambodia and Thailand, that the royal king is being governed by our royal monks also. That is the monk had the same share in the administration also. But in India, we are not having such type of controlling power, so that the monks can be united at one point also. And there were ethical and moral degradation of the bhikkhus also. In Mahayana Buddhism, we see that how bhikkhus were more concerned with the ceremonies as well as ritual. Buddhism become more ritualistic than devotional. So in the beginning we are having the, you can say, devotional aspect of Buddhism, but later on it was converted to our ritualistic aspect of Buddhism. So that may be one of the factor for decline of the Buddhism. And then there was one of the main factor for the decline of Buddhism, that researches are going on. Collaborations of the Buddhist Sangha with Arab invaders and Arab traders also. After the 10th century AD, we see that how Arabs, travelers and the traders were coming. And the Buddhist Sangha, they were more mercantile. They were more having the, you can say, in trading system. They were and for development of their temples and their monasteries, they had to depend on the merchants also, and in that way they had some collaborations with the Arab invaders also, and that was the vital point for the decline of the Buddhism. If you go through the Arab travelers' history as well as our Sindh, that is the Indus, how the trades were being done, and how the Buddhist Sanghas were more collaborative in the our trade system. So that became one of the main factor for the decline of the Buddhism. Their devotional as well as respect to our Buddha, they were degrading always. So they were more, you can say, economical. So there were two aspects for any society. That is the one is the social as well as economic. For the development of any country or a state, these two aspects are more necessary. The social aspect as well as our economic aspect. Economic aspect was mainly based upon the Ganga Doab regions, the traders, and we see that from the Gupta period how the urban centers were. So urban center became more, you can say, factor for the growth of the Buddhism also. And when they were more in the time at the time of the Buddha also, how the Sreshtis and how the traders were also giving donations to the our sanghas, Buddhist sangha, and in the beginning it was good, but later on it became our other aspects also. Brahmanas also saw this aspect that donations can be given to the Buddhist Sangha also. And the aristocrat families of the Hindus as well as the Brahmanas, they were giving donations to the Buddhist Sangha for the upliftment also. In Nalanda Mahavihar also we are having some of the references that how the Brahmins were giving lands as well as the corpus money to the Sangha, and in lieu of that giving the donations, they were having some shares of their celebrations of the monasteries also. They were keeping their idols in the our Buddhist monastery also. The votive stupas were also constructed in lieu of the donations. When the Brahmanas were giving the donations to the Buddhist Sangha, they were having voting stupas also. And voting stupas were constructed in name of the Brahman deities and the gods also. So in that, in due course, these donations by the Brahmins to the Buddhist Sangha, it became one of the vital factor for the decline of the Buddhism also. Because in the monasteries, Viharas or Mahaviharas, Brahmanas were holding more aristocratic administrative affairs than the Buddhist Sangha also. So that was one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism in India also. Then we are having the references of how the Muslims were taxing Hindus and the Buddhists also. Wherever the monasteries, the jizya and some religious taxes were issued by the Muslim rulers also. As for example, if you go to Varanasi, or even in Lumbini also, there are Brahmins and the Hindus also. And when the jazyas and the religious taxes were given, then the Hindus became and the Buddhists became Muslims also for getting relief from the jizya taxes or religious taxes. So those who were Muslims, they were not giving the taxes, religious taxes. So even if you see Lumbini or in Varanasi or religious places, the number of persons are Muslims also. These Muslims of Lumbini or Varanasi, they were previously Hindus and getting relief from the jizya religious taxes, they became Muslims. So that was the decline of Buddhism, where the Buddhists were already lived together in great mass. So the mass was converted into our Muslims. So it was also one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism, the religious taxes as well as the jizya taxes which were imposed to the non-Muslims. Non-Muslims means Hindus and the Buddhists also. So that was the main factors of. And there are some of the historians who are of the opinion that attacks of the Muslims again and again from the Babar's times till the Aurangzeb. So they were and we see the Nalanda Mahavihar and Vikramshila Mahavihar, Odantapuri Mahavihar, how they were destroyed so many times by our Muslim rulers also. So attacking again and again, it was one of the factors for decline of the Buddhism also. And if you go through that Lama Taranath, history of Buddhism in India, and he writes about it that for how many months the Nalanda Mahavihar libraries was burning for so many mornings, and even the bhikkhus, monks who were staying in, they left for the Himalayas because of Muslims and Tarsi inventions also. So that was one of the factors for the, and that was not only one of the factors, but there were so many factors. But this and even Buddhists were more responsible because they were having alliance with the Muslim Turks also. So there are some archaeological evidences that how they were having some contacts with the Buddhist Sangha also. And with the help of the Buddhist Sangha, they attacked the monasteries and others. So the moral degradations of the bhikkhus in the Viharas became one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism in India. There was another factor for the decline of Buddhism, but that is called as Sufism. Sufism also, after the Mughal period, we are having the Sufism. How the Sufism concept developed there, and in the areas of Sufism and the Dargah. Dargah, the people were promoted like this, and those who were Buddhist, they became followers of the Sufism as well as Dargah and other things. So that was also, you can say, one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism also. But besides of these factors, there are some of the archaeological evidences which show that how Buddhism declined in India. I will discuss some of the points of decline of Buddhism and in that periods also. So, and the temples and the shrines during the Pala period, they were not given expansions of the Buddhisms also. And we see that at the time of Palas, how the king of Devapal, Mahipal, how there was a diversification of the Buddhism also. They were not given patronage at that time also. So that was, and in the context of Pala period, Bihar and Bengal, the emergence of new kind of Buddhist religions centers, what has been called as settlement shrines. Settlement shrines means that some of the temples which were constructed and the Buddhist idols were kept legal. So these are called as settlement shrines also. And these were one of the factors which are called as, and it is also called that these settlement shrines delinked the faith of Buddhism from its monasteries and resulted in diversifications of the social base of our Buddhism also. Because whenever there is a settlement shrines, so it delinked the social base at that time also. And that was one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism. And we see that settlement shrines attracted patronage from non-elite segment of society. So that was the popularized the worship of different instrumental deities of Vajrayana in Nepal also, and in some of the parts of India like Bengal. We are having the Vajrayana cult of Buddhism also. So this settlement, non-elite segments patronized the worship of different instrumental deities of Vajrayana and ensured the lingering of Buddhism for quite some time, even after foundations of the Turkic rule in Bihar and Bengal. Even the Muslim rules was already ruling in India, but in some parts of Bihar and Bengal, this our Vajrayana mysticism was continuing in that area also. So this was one of the factors for that. So even we have seen that how the donations were given to the monasteries by the Brahmanas and other things, other religious persons also. So like in Bengal or in some parts of medieval Bihar, that there was a total absence of kings, queens, Ranakas, Samantas, Senapatis, and other restricted members of the state apparatus as donors of sculptures. So we see that how after the Turks invasions, the Buddhist monasteries were not having donations or the patronage by the kings, queens or Samantas or the Senapatis or other things. So even the sculptures were mostly donated by non-monastic, non-aristocratic segment of the society. So those who were not belonging to the Buddhism, the sculptures were being given. Even in Nalanda case also, we are having the sculptures and the seals which were constructed, which were donated by the non-Buddhist organizations. Even a study of inscriptions from early medieval Orissa indicated a different pattern where Ranakas and Vajrayana Acharyas emerged as two major groups that donated sculptures. We see through our Orissan history that how this Vajrayana Acharya emerged as the two major groups that donated sculptures. So even Vajrayana, if you go through the Nepal history, how Vajrayana Acharyas have got influence in the society also. At present also, the Vajrayana Acharyas are also having dominated. Even in Lumbini Buddhist University also, if you see that there are Vajrayacharyas Vajracharya, that they are believers of the Vajrayana Buddhism also. So they are having a aesthetic as well as dominating influence in the Nepali society also. So they have their own temples, they have their own traditions also. So in the recent studies by the Archaeological Survey of India and others, and there are some of the scholars who are doing that what were the main factors of the decline of the Buddhism. They are saying that the votive stupas, which have been rightly treated as one of the archaeological markers of the pilgrimage to a Buddhist sacred site. So this votive stupas were constructed, and in the parts of the medieval Bihar and in Bengal, there were tremendous variations in the votive stupas to which a monastic center was willing to open up. So it has been observed that in the case of Mahabodhi, Nalanda Mahabodhi Mahavihar or Nalanda Mahavihar or Kurki Karva took determined steps of attracting and retaining pilgrimage from non-monastic, non-aristocratic devotees by offering access to the sacred spots in their religious space. So if you go to the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya, you will see that how the Hindus were giving the donations, and in lieu of giving the donations, they were having, you can say, authority to enter into the Mahabodhi temple, and they were also having their own religious rituals and ceremonies also. So in that way, that became one of the factor for the decline of Buddhism, because in some of the monasteries, because they were not having some money to look after the affairs of the Biharas, they were taking helps or donations from the non-Buddhist, that is the Brahmanic, and they were very much clever, they were intellectuals, and they were taking share in all the ceremonies of the monasteries as well as other ritualistic aspect of the Mahavihar. So that became one of the aspect of decline of the Buddhism. And if you go to the Mahabodhi temple, Mahavihar, you will see that how some small votive stupas are constructed, and they were constructed by our Hindus. So having dominations in the affairs of also, and you will see that in Mahabodhi temple also, the Mahant, Indian Mahant, that is Hindu Mahant, has the share. And still Bodh Gaya temple case, which Anagarik Dharmapal was fighting for a long time, and he did not get success in that Mahabodhi temple, Bodh Gaya temple case also, because all the dominations were taken by the Hindus there, because Hindus priests were residing inside the Mahabodhi temple, and not only Mahabodhi temple but other temples also, and Kushinagar also, and all the Buddhist temples came in clutch of the Hindus also, and the dominion power were taken from the Buddhist to the Hindus also. That was one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism also. So these are the votive stupas which were constructed. These are the symbols and the signs that how we can assume or presume that Buddhism declined in India. So that was one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism also. Vikramshila had traditional pattern, not as enthusiastic as Nalanda, as Kurpiyar were, but not as reluctant as Sompura, Mahavihar, and many monastic sites located at the Mainamati, Lalmai ridge of Bangladesh. So we will see that how, besides of Nalanda and other, Vikramshila had another different opinion of decline of Buddhism also. So these studies from early medieval Bihar, Bengal, Orissa indicate there was no uniformity in the patterns of ritual engagement between Buddhist monastic centers and their monastic non-aristocratic devotees. So this was the one of the main factors for the decline of Buddhism. Again, there was a deadlock and there were conflicts between the Brahmanism as well as Buddhism also. And this developed during the Pala period. Devpala and Mahipal, and we are having. So wherever possible, Buddhist monasteries were destroyed or attempted to be destroyed by the Brahminical opponent of Buddhism. So these are, even then Buddhism could hold its turf due to the diffuse presence of Vajrayana in society. So we are having this. So this deadlock in the protracted conflict between Buddhism and Brahmanism. So this could be broken only when the Turks started to attack these areas. So when the conflict between the Buddhist and the Brahmanism, it was broken only when the Muslims attacked India, and this became another factor for the decline of Buddhism. So that caused the final downfall of the Buddhism when the Muslims attacked India. Brahminical opponents of Buddhism were forced to transfer political powers to Muslims. So Brahminical opponents of Buddhism. So the Buddhism which were opposed by the Brahmanas, they were forced to transfer political powers to the Muslims, but got a free hand in social repression. Still, Buddhism lingered in some parts of Bengal and Orissa till the middle of 16th century. So, in some of the parts of the our West Bengal and even if East Bengal that become our Bangladesh, we see some parts of the Theravada Buddhism is still existing. So it was not taken by that because Muslims did not go to that extent. So they became here northern part of India also. So in Bengal as well as in many other parts of India, a considerable proportions of people who used to found representation in Buddhism turned to Islam. So that was main factor. So a considerable proportions of people who used to found representations in Buddhism, they turned to Islam. So all the Buddhists, those who were in northern India, by attacking Muslims again and again, they adopted Muslims religions. So this was the main, you can say, factor for decline of Buddhism. But there are some of the historians like N.N. Bhattacharya of West Bengal. He has remarked that history shows that even a small religions in the face of wildest persecutions could maintain their independent entity, and persecutions made them even stronger. So in some parts of Bengal, we see that how Buddhists are still in Chittagaon of Bangladesh, in some parts of the Bengal or in West Bengal, in nearby Kolkata, the Buddhists are still flourishing. In the 16th century AD also, after the Muslim invasions, still Muslims, they did not accept this Muslims, but still they were protesting the Muslims, and still they are progressing. So it is not only that because of the Turkish invasion, Buddhism declined in India. In some of the parts, like in northern India, like Nalanda Mahavihar, Vikramshila Mahavihar, these parts were destroyed by the Muslims. But other parts in Bengal, the Buddhists were protesting Muslims, and they were progressing and they were rising also. So that was one of the factors for the remaining status of Buddhism in India. So again, that in Mahavihar, like Nalanda Mahavihar, we are having Varnashram Vyavastha for a Virt. So that Mahavihar attracted and accepted patronage even Seva rulers, as indicated in the pre-Palak inscriptions. Archaeological evidences show that there are inscriptions during the pre-Pala period in which there is a mention that the Mahavihar, like Nalanda Mahavihar, they accepted donations or the patronage even the Shiva rulers. That is the Hindu, the persons who are having belief in the Shiva. So Shiva rulers, they were Vishnu rulers also and Shiva rulers also. But even the Savaite rulers and the Brahminical like Vishnu rulers, they migrated to other parts of the Asia, like South Asia, and their syncretism of Hindu religion as well as Buddhist religions is being seen nowadays also. Still the temples and the monasteries are available there. So that is one of the, you can say, Buddhist establishment of early medieval Magadha frequently accepted the donations of inscribed Brahminical sculptures. So it is said that Buddhist establishment of early medieval Magadha region, they frequently accepted the donations of inscribed Brahminical sculptures by donors belonging to non-monastic aristocratic persons without expressed Buddhist identity category. So they were not Buddhist, but they were giving donations to the our Mahavihar. So Brahminical sculptures also commanded worship in the religious space of such Buddhist establishment. So where the Buddhist deities were worshipped, then our Brahminical sculptures, those who were making the idols of the Buddha, they were also having their share in the ceremonies of the Buddhist gods, and in many cases Buddhist monks kept some Brahminical sculptures within their monastic cells as object of personal worship. So it is also said that some monks kept some Brahminical sculptures within their monastic cells. Even in Gaya, if you see that there are so many Brahminical idols which are available in our Buddhist temples also. And in due course, these Buddhist temples were converted into Hindu temples also. So that is the transitional phase of that. So that is the transitional. Even in some of the Buddhist deities are being worshipped by Hindus nowadays also, that they belong to the Kali or Hindu goddess or Hindu gods also. So this is the there are some of the problems related with this, that how donations of land in favor of Buddhist monastery and a group of Brahmanas coexisting in the same general area by the same ruler also. In the same area of the monastery, we see that how the Hindus are also living, they are also having their ceremonies, their worships. So this is now the question arises that what was the sharing a space within the Buddhist monastic religious space when these two groups were living together. So it is said that the presence of any Brahminical deity in the religious space of any Buddhist religious center is a sign of Brahminical occupation. In any Buddhist temple, if you see that there is a Hindu god, there is a statue of Hindu god, it seems that it has been overtaken by the Hindus.
Yeah. That's true.
So that is in Hindu temple generally we do not see any Buddhist god. But in the Buddhist temple, if there is any sculpture of Hindu gods, it means that it has been dominated by the Brahmanas also. So in some of the parts of northern India, we see that in monastery, the Brahmanas were having their dominion power in all the administrative and managerial affairs of monasteries or the sanghas also or viharas. So that was you can say, one of the factor for decline of the Buddhism also. So I will give you one of the examples that in the Mahabodhi temple, Bodh Gaya, that Mahabodhi inscribed linten that there is installation of the Chaumukh Mahadev in a shrine for the welfare of the Snatakas of the Mahabodhi, became as indicator of the seva occupation of the site. So this Mahabodhi temple was overtaken by the Saivites also, those Hindus who were having belief in the Lord Shiva. So this is the clear, the Chaumukh Mahadev in the Bodhi temple, we are having references like this. So this is observation of archaeological excavations or archaeological researchers, how they are taking. So, and the son of an ordinary murtikar or the sculpture would have found it impossible to do that in the regime of Buddhist king Dhamma at the holiest Buddhist site. Similarly, his analysis of Nalanda temple site too, as a Seva temple site occupying the sacred space of the Buddhist Mahavihar, is open to many questions. So that is that how the Nalanda temple site too is considered as a Seva temple also. So this occupying sacred space of the Buddhist Mahavihar, now it is a question among the historians or archaeologists that how they are thinking about it. So these are some of the aspects related with these factors. But now we are coming to some recent researches which have been undertaken by our Professor K.T.S. Rao. So his observations, he has written a book on decline of Buddhism in India, and he has discussed all the previous scholars related with the decline of Buddhism in India. So there are some of the factors in a very summarized way. I would like to say that there were at least 5 factors for the decline of Buddhism, according to Professor K.T.S. Rao. The first was urban character, lack of mass base, and anti-Buddhist Brahman peasant alliance. So that was the one of the factors, like that Buddhists were urbanized. They became traders also. They were taking part in the trading system of all these things. So that became one of the aspects of decline of Buddhism also. They deviated from the path of getting a state of eternal bliss also. And at the time of the Buddha, and there were 2 for the Upasaka, ladies, Upasaka, Upasikas, Bhikkhu and Bhikkhunis. There were 4, you can say, social gradations of the people also. There were Chatuparisa, that is called as Chatuparisa, and 4-fold according to Hindu tradition, that is the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaisya and Sudras. Buddha says that everyone is equal, all are equal, no one is inferior or superior by the way of birth or caste or anyway. All, and whosoever thinks that one is superior or one is inferior, it is papakam dithigatam, that he is occupied with an offense also. He is charged with and offense also. So in later course, we see that Buddha gives there are fourfold Chatuparisa, that is the Bhikkhu, Bhikkhuni, Upasak and Upasikas. And these Upasak and Upasikas, as well as Bhikkhu and Bhikkhunis, later on they were more associated with the urban character. They were developing for the development of their monasteries. They were involved in the trading systems, traders. They became traders also, and they were in that way they were not having the roots with the society. There were lack of the roots of the mass people to the our sangha, to the Buddhist people, and weakness of Indian Buddhism, and that is called anti-Buddhist Brahman Peasant Alliance. So Brahmins were having alliance with the peasants, and in that way they were oppressing, opposing the Buddhist also. When Brahmanas got alliance with the peasant, that is the labor system, and in that way they were opposing our Buddhist or Sangha. So that was one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism also. Professor K.T.S. Rao, again, he thinks that there was another factor for the decline of Buddhism, that is called as inalienable affiliations with the dependence upon mercantile communities for material support. So Buddhists were more dependent on the mercantile or merchandise communities for the material support. For the upliftment of the monasteries, they were more dependent on the merchants also. In that way, they became more traders also. And in that way, they deviated the path of getting a state of eternal bliss, not purification of his consciousness, but they were getting material support from the merchants also. So that became one of the factor for the decline of Buddhism also. Then the third, intellectual snobbery, social aloofness, and lack of interest in cultivating loyal supporters. When the Buddhists were or the Sanghas were not having close linkage with the people of the society, they were also losing the loyal support of the common masses there also. And that became one of the most vital factor for the decline of Buddhism. When you do not have the, you can say, base of your support from the society, you cannot develop in the society also. And there were deviation of the Buddhist educations also. The Buddhist ideals which were involved in the logic and reasoning, the monks were deviating from the logic and reasoning also, and in that way they were losing their intellectual, you can say, capacity, and they were more involved with the mercantile or traders systems. In that way, that was the main, you can say, one of the factors were. And there was social aloofness. When the Sangha became aloof from the society, you are also losing the support of the common people also, Upasak and Upasikas also. So in that way, it became one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism. Then our K.T.S. Rao, he also thinks that death wish mentality. There were some of the monks or the Buddhists which were having wish that they must have, even after death, Turkish invasions, some of the monks left to the Nepal Terai,
Yeah.
to the mountains areas. They were not having any, you can say, support. They did not get any support from the common people, and they also died in the due course, not having any support from the common people. So that was called as death wish mentality, and in that way it became one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism. When all the bhikkhus left Nalanda Mahavihar or Vikramshila Mahavihar, Udantapuri Mahavihar, and they went to the mountains of the Himalayas, then they were not having the common people, and in that way, in due course, the Buddhism declined in India. Then the last factor, what K.T. Sarao ji thinks about it, overwhelming presence of Brahminical elements in the Sangha. So we have seen that how the Brahman sculptures, they got introduced into the Buddhist temples, and they were also putting their gods into the Buddhist temples also, and they were giving donations and material support to the Buddhist Sangha, and in that way, in due course, the Brahmanas were having full hold of the Buddhist temples, and in due course, Buddhist temples were converted into Hindu temples also. So this is the overwhelming presence of the Brahmanas into the Buddhist temples. That was one of the factors also for decline of Buddhism. How Sangha was occupied by the Brahmanas and unintentionally playing second fiddle to the Brahminical Hinduism. So even we have seen that how Lord Buddha was considered as one of the 10th incarnation of the Buddhism, 10th incarnation of the Lord Vishnu. So some of the scholars like Professor A.L. Bassam of School of Oriental and African Studies, London, he thinks that Buddhism did not decline in India, but it was assimilated into Hinduism, because most of the philosophical aspects or the, you can say, teachings or the thoughts, they were assimilated by our Hindus, Brahmanas, and they became one of the part and parcel of Hinduism. Since Buddha was considered as one of the 10th incarnation, he was also considered as one of the avatars of the Lord Vishnu also. So all the teachings of the Buddha are considered as a part and parcel of Hindu thoughts also. So that was the, you can say, one of the last factors what Professor K.T. Sarao observes about it. So these two religious systems may have in the end made the crucial difference, whereby one, see, in the case of Jainism, Jainism managed to survive, and other, our Buddhist, they failed to maintain an independent existence. So because they were not having independent identity, all the elements of the Buddhist were got assimilated into the thoughts of Hinduism. So that was the one of the factors for the decline of Buddhism also. So, Venerable, these are some of the points which I have discussed related with the decline of Buddhism in India. And even though if you think that some of the aspects can be also discussed related with the decline of Buddhism in India, we can sit together again and then we'll discuss the things. So thank you very much for asking me to give some of the views related with the decline of Buddhism in India. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, very much. This is a very, very comprehensive explanation about the reason why the Buddhism declined in India.
Yes.
As I see, all the reasons Professor already mentioned and provide us very detailed explanation, detailed knowledge. And in that case, I hope everybody who attend the conference and some other who the audience can clearly understand what is the reason. Before we come to conclusion, Professor, please can give us some advice how we can maintain and how we can develop Buddhism, not only in India but also in other areas, because now Buddhism is also very developed in other countries, but they are also following the same pattern to be declined. Professor, in that case, please give us some advice as we are the new generation to following the Buddhism, how we can maintain and how we can develop the Buddhism in the world.
Okay. So that is very good questions you have asked. So if you go through the teachings of the Buddha, available in the suttas, available in the Diknikaya Sutta, and if you go to the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, you will find the words of the Buddha that how Buddha talks about that how the religion can develop, and he talks about the Satta Aparihaniya Dhamma, that there are 7 factors for not declining. So if you see that respect to other religions also, that becoming Buddhist, it is not seen that you have to talk about yourself and your religion also, but you have to give respect to other religions also. And I am not saying that being secular, but that how Buddha talks about that respecting other religions also, you can develop your own religions. And even respecting to your elders, parents, and as well as the women. Buddha talks about a lot of things about the status of Buddhism, and Buddha also says that women are as equal in intelligentsia, equal to our male bhikkhus also. They are not inferior in any respect. So they are having more intelligentsia, and he talks about the Patachara and Dhamma, Dinna and others, and Buddha says that they are more intelligent than the common bhikkhus at that time also. So here Buddha also talks about that respecting women. You can also develop your religions also. And meeting together fortnightly or once in a month, and resolving your problem in the society, you can also maintain the things. And respecting other religions and the temples, chaityas, stupas of other religions also, not only the Buddhist also, but other religious faith also, one has to respect also. This is the thing. So, but in case of India, what I see that India does not have any state religion. So from the very beginning, it was, you can say, secular also. And our His Holiness Dalai Lama also talks that how India has continued for since a long time as a secular country, and even nowadays also he says that India is following the secular country. In that respect, he in Constitution of India is also model on the basis of our Buddhist faith also, and respecting all religions. In the preamble of India, if you go through it, it is written that India will respect to all the religious persons. So here, becoming a state religion, it is not possible. But respecting all the religious faith there must be an effort of the people also, that how we are respecting other religious persons, the chaityas or the temples or beliefs or the faith also. One has respect to all the things. Even a person who wants to enter into the state from the another state, he must be given a chance to come here, and his religion and faith cannot be changed. Since he has migrated to your country and he has taken a refuge in your state, you must respect his religion, what he is observing. So in that way, your religion can be also flourished in that way. And we cannot have the affairs like Sri Lanka or Thailand, where in the royal decisions, the Sangha has the power to take decisions in that way also. So, but these countries are also having some problems in Sri Lanka or in Thailand also. But how a country respects other religions, it depends upon it. And in India also, those Buddhists who are living and they are their faith in the Buddhism, they must respect other religious faith also. There must be not moral degradations or ethical degradations in their life. We must follow the path of the teachings of the Buddha. We must not have desires so much that cannot be fulfilled. We must be satisfied whatever we are having. Santuttam param dhanam. So Buddha says also that ghasa chhadan paramatai bhikkhu santuttho, that a person must be satisfied with covering of the body by the leaves and the grass, and taking meals only for sustaining the body also. We must not have the desires. Desires are unlimited. It cannot be fulfilled any time. So we must resist our desires also. So these are some of the things which we can see that, and when what I observed that since Buddhists were more associated with the traders and the mercantile or merchants, this was one of the factors for decline of the Buddhism also. So this is the, and in the Nalanda Mahavihara and other monasteries, for the material supports or the comforts, they had given supports, a space to the Brahmanas also in their temples or the monasteries also. That became one of the factors for the decline of the Buddhism. Those bhikkhus, not because of this moral material support, they had not given to the space to the Brahmanas, the state, our religion, that is the Buddhist, we are having more dominion in our India. So that is the main thing. So,
thank you, Professor, very much. And from this point, we, the generation, young generation, we would like to appreciate Professor to teach us and give us so many insight into the question, the decline of the Buddhism. And we are now very clear, understand all the factors, and we also have the chance to see which is the main factor and which is the common factor. And we don't know how to explain how we are appreciate and how we knowledgeable about that. But please accept our thank you to Professor for our today's discussion. Thank you, Professor, very much.
thank you very much, and convey my regards to your rector, Dhamma Sami, and I am very much thankful to him also. I had so many times we had discussed with some of the academic things.
Also we
So
talk.
yes, yes. So kindly convey my regards to him also and other faculty members of your state Shan University,
Thank you,
Shan
Professor.
State University.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Bante. See you again.
Yeah,
I
see you,
think
Professor.
some of the views which have been given by me, it will be very helpful
Very
in
helpful.
your research.
Yeah,
So
for
thank
our
you.
future.
So in a very short way and a very short time, you had asked me, so I had discussed some of the points with you. So thank you very much.
Yeah. This is a very comprehensive discussion that Professor provided us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
So this
Professor.
is, I think, about 1 hour we had discussed about.
More than 1 hour.
More than
Professor.
1 hour.
1 hour and 15 minutes.